Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of PodPaca, the only podcast that has people from Waupaca, Wisconsin on the podcast every single episode. Today, our guest is Bill Zimmerman, who is a Waupaca resident, and he is the owner of Office Outfitters. We'll get to talk to him about how he was able to use social media to his advantage to keep his store community together and strong during the pandemic. And we'll also get to learn how Bill even got Office Outfitters in the first place. Hear why he loves Waupaca so much and wouldn't want to go into bigger cities instead. All this is coming up on PodPaca. Before we start, just want to give you a little profanity warning. The little kids might not want to listen to this one. And also, this episode is presented by Lucky Tree. Thank you, Lucky Tree, for presenting and sponsoring PodPaca. Make sure to check out Lucky Tree's family of shops in downtown Waupaca on Main Street. So today on PodPaca, we have another special guest. Today, we are going to talk to the owner of Office Outfitters and a Facebook Live host of How Local Are You?, which is on Office Outfitters' Facebook page. So please welcome Bill Zimmerman to PodPaca.
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm really happy to be on the podcast with you guys.
Wow, cool. Hey, and everybody, today's Bill's birthday. So happy birthday, man.
Yeah, happy birthday.
So,
Got a
we
gin
saw
and tonic here.
yeah, we saw you at the Simpsons earlier, enjoying a little festivities. So
Yep.
What's your go-to at Simpsons?
Well, my go-to is the same at Simpsons as it is at home. In the summertime, it's New Amsterdam gin and tonic, and it's a tall single. So it's not a lot of alcohol, but it's very thirst quenching. So that's what I do in the summertime. And then in the winter, I'll shift to a vodka martini that's dirty. So you just fill a glass with ice, throw some vodka in it and some olive juice and some olives, and you're good to go. So that's what I do. It's kind of seasonal.
yeah, I always end up going with the summer shanty, the beer this time of year on tap. And then I usually go with maybe a fat tire, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
In the wintertime. It's funny how we change with the seasons.
Yeah, I agree. I go with a heavier beer in the winter. It's just, something a little darker, a little heavier. Absolutely.
I think I almost enjoy going out to eat at some of the cool places here more in the winter.
Oh, yeah.
It's just kind of nice. It's all, it gets dark at what, 4:30 here.
Mhm. Yep. And if they have a fireplace, like Simpsons or the Wheelhouse, pretty darn cozy.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you too, man. I mean, have you been in Waupaca your whole life?
I grew up I was born in Madison. And then when I was 7, my parents bought a cabin on the chain. So we started coming up every weekend. And then when I was 11, we moved to Sun Prairie, which is, suburban Madison. But, our weekends, it was like every weekend in the summer, we were coming up here. And so it's been my second home. And then when I became a teenager, it was like, I kind of like this better than Sun Prairie or Madison. It's just a wonderful place, and especially in the summer. And it was my lifelong dream to, live here. So, ultimately I figured it out. But, when I was younger and in college, I thought, man, the only way you could ever live in Waupaca is if, you worked at the foundry. So I didn't, I wasn't aware that there might be another avenue, to live here.
Well, sure. And I mean, I know you bought a Office Outfitters back when it was the Lighthouse. And I mean, I forgot how many years you've owned that now.
It was December of 2007. So We're
Okay,
coming up on our 15th anniversary.
cool. And what were you in business here before that as well?
It's kind of a long and winding road. When I graduated from UW Whitewater, I thought I wanted to be in the hotel business. So I worked in Minneapolis at a Sheraton, and then I got what I thought was my dream job of a management training position with Hyatt. And I worked for them for a year in Minneapolis, and then they transferred me to Baltimore. And then when I was in Baltimore, I figured out that the hotel business wasn't everything it was cracked up to be, because like the general manager and, the top 3 people in the hotel, when I looked at them, it's like they were like addicted to cocaine or alcoholic or divorced. And it's like, man, I'm looking at my future. And
Hmm.
it's like, I don't see myself living like this, So I got a job outside of the hotel industry, and it was actually with a greeting card company called Gibson Greetings. We were the number 3 greeting card company at the time, behind Hallmark and American Greetings. And there was an opening in Richmond, Virginia. So I interviewed and got that job in Richmond, and I could keep going. I mean, but I got that job. I met my wife, Mary, there. We got married. We had children. We had 2 kids in Richmond, and then I got transferred to Raleigh, North Carolina. And then from Raleigh, I got transferred with that company to Cincinnati, Ohio, in marketing. And that's where I was when I found out about a job opportunity in Clintonville with a company called Converting Incorporated. And in 1994, I was offered a job with Converting Incorporated in Clintonville. And it was a marketing position, and they make party goods like paper plates and napkins and that kind of thing. And so my wife, Mary, did not want to move there. And at the time, we were debating about whether to have a 3rd child or not. And she's like, I don't really want to move to Wisconsin. She's been here during the 4th of July when it's great. She had been here during Christmas when it was like 20 below. And she's like, I don't really want to live in Wisconsin, but we've been thinking about a 3rd child. And she was for the 3rd child. I was not in favor. And she's like, if we have a 3rd child, I'll move to Wisconsin. So we had Greta, and it was the best decision we have ever made, because we have this wonderful daughter, and we moved to Waupaca, and I took that job. And so I worked for that company for about 14 years, and I was a VP of marketing there. And I was there, and it was a family-owned business, and they were very wise owners. They allowed the senior managers, which I was part of the senior management team, to earn ownership in the company. So I owned a little tiny piece of the company when they decided to sell in 2005. And so the family that founded the company sold it to private equity. And because they sold it, I made a little bit of money. And then I rolled what I made back into the new company. They kept me on the management team. And for 2 more years, we ran the company. And then this new owner sold us again. And at that point, it was obvious there was not going to be a place for me at that company. The company was being sold for the 2nd time in 2 years. I had been working on my MBA for 4 years. I was just taking 1 class at a time. I loved school. I love the master's program, but I didn't overdo it. It was more about the class than it was about getting the degree quick. And so in 2007, I was about to finish my MBA, and I also knew that this company was going to be sold, and I wasn't going to have a job. So it was probably early October, and I needed to print a paper for a class. Back before you just submit a PDF to your professor, we actually printed papers and handed them in, and I was out of ink. So I went to Kmart, and of course, Kmart was out of stock. They never had what you needed. Couldn't find what I needed. So I called Benjamin at the Lighthouse. He was the owner. He also went to church at Shepherd of the Lakes where I went. And I'm like, hey, Benjamin, you got an HP 56 cartridge? He's like, yeah, I got one. I'm like, okay. I said, it was about 5:40. I said, you close at 6? He's like, no, I closed 10 minutes ago, but come on in and I'll sell you, the ink you need. So I went in and we're talking, and I'm like, so how's it going? He's like, life couldn't be better. He's like, I'm engaged, be married, and life is good. I'm like, oh, who is it? He said, oh, you wouldn't know her. She lives in Cincinnati. I'm like, oh, okay. I said, is she moving here? He's like, no, I'm moving there. I'm like, oh, what about this place? He said, I'm selling it. I'm like, really? When? He's like, well, I'm getting married in December. I'm like, Said, do you have a buyer? He's like, well, I'm talking to one guy. I'm like, would you talk to me? He's like, sure. So we proceeded to have a discussion, and we came to terms. I had a little bit of money from, being part of the ownership group of this other company. And so I went home and I told Mary, it's like, hey, if my position is going away. So in another 3 months, I'm going to be looking for a job. And the chance of finding a VP of marketing job within commuting distance in 2007 on the verge of a recession, it ain't going to happen. I said, we're going to end up in some hellhole like Madison or Milwaukee or Minneapolis. I mean, we're living in paradise. So, I mean, we may end up in a city. And I'm like, we need to think about buying this business. She's like, no way. There's no way in hell we are going to buy that business. So we proceeded to have the biggest argument of our marriage. And, it was bad. And for the first time ever, I mean, we've always come to decisions, really united. And I kind of pulled like the head of household card. I'm like, look, you want to stay here in Waupaca. And this is the only way we're going to be able to stay in Waupaca. So I think we're going to buy this business. And so it caused a lot of friction. We bought the business. I have to say also, as we proceed through this discussion, you might find me interjecting some of my faith. And I believe the Lord provided this opportunity for me to talk to Benjamin about buying this business because, first of all, at 5:40, when he picked up the phone, he didn't need to pick up the phone. I mean, if somebody calls me at Office Outfitters 10 minutes after we close, there's no way in hell I'm going to pick up the phone. It's like, I'm going to let it go to voicemail. He picked up the phone. I went in there. We talked. There was a perfect opportunity. If he wouldn't have picked up the phone, I wouldn't have known that this business was for sale. Seriously. So
could have changed the landscape of so much right there.
Absolutely. So I believe I am a man of faith. I believe that the Lord provided an opportunity for us to stay here and to do his work. And we've been doing that ever since. Mary was pretty pissed off. We fought about it. There were tears, but after about a year, she was good with it. And it's been really good ever since. We love being part of the community. We love owning a business here, and working with people like you and Michelle and Joe. It's just great. So
I get the impression that is this like it was your only option in a way to do this, or was the business just so attractive to you that, oh, I have to do this? You just saw a lot of opportunity.
That's an awesome question, Joe. That's really insightful because I didn't know. At the time, it is October. The business I was working for is going to be sold in December. So I had no idea what my opportunity might be if I would go on a job search. I had actually started talking to a career counselor, and I was going to work on my resume and I had a plan. I was going to work I'm going to look for a job within like a half-hour commute, hour commute. And then the last resort would be like, you know what, I'm going to look for a job within a couple hours, you know, in Wisconsin or Minnesota. So I had no idea where I would land. And it wasn't like my only opportunity, but if we wanted to stay in Waupaca, I felt like it was my only opportunity. At that time, I was working for a company in Clintonville, and Mary was very community minded at that time. I was driving back and forth to Clintonville every day. She was more tuned into like the Waupaca community than I was. So I didn't know anyone like at the Foundry or Gusmer Enterprises or Falks Brothers or any of these places where, you know, maybe I could get a job. I wasn't really connected.
Yeah.
So I felt like if we're going to stay in Waupaca, it is our only opportunity. I mean, we could have, if I wouldn't have taken this, again, I honestly believe we would have ended up in some horrible suburb somewhere.
I would say you're right. Well, it sounds like you have similar, your relationship with Mary is similar to that of me and Michelle, because my risk threshold is through the ceiling, whereas hers is a little more practical, I would say. So yeah, we've had some of those same types of discussions you're talking about. You had,
Yep.
and you know, I got to I always had to keep in mind that, well, you're talking about a major change, and that's always scary, and it's scarier to some people more than others. And
Yep.
but I was going to ask, building on to that quick with you buying the store and your faith and all that. The one thing I found with having some businesses going on that was totally unexpected was the social aspect. You know, it's, you know, I can't really put a price on that. You know, walking around town, you can't even walk down the sidewalk without talking to people for 15 minutes. And I mean, that's a good thing. And the social aspects, what surprised me, I guess. It kind of, any business classes I've ever taken, they've never talked about that.
No.
So
No.
I didn't know if you experienced the same thing.
Absolutely. You know, and I think Mary and I are like you and Michelle. I mean, you know, we're social people, so, you know, you can't help but get involved in the social fabric of the community. And, you know, you're doing business with friends and neighbors. And that's an awesome thing. I mean, when I was working for this other company in Clintonville, I was working with assholes in New York and LA, and these people are pricks, and they're, you know, it's like, you know, this is just so wonderful because you're working with, you know, people are, again, friends and neighbors, and you have an opportunity also. I mean, we quickly got involved in the chamber and different community organizations, and, you know, pretty soon you can't separate your personal life from your business. And that's what's great about small business in Waupaca.
Oh yeah, I can't get over Waupaca. I've lived in a few small communities and then in very large communities, but I can't really pinpoint one thing why Waupaca is so spectacular, other than it's, you know, just the people. And there's a lot of transplants here, it seems like. And you know, it seems like a very, I don't want to say well educated, because I think that term gets overused, but maybe a well-read, well thought out group of people. I don't know quite how to put it. I was going to ask you too, you've been here in business considerably longer than I have. What changes have you seen that just, you know, really emphasize your feelings towards Waupaca over that time frame?
Could I touch on, you know, your previous point about what makes Waupaca interesting and special? So, you know, I've talked about this with some other folks before, and I believe it's just this really unusual mix of, we have the lakes. So we got that. It draws people to us. So we got this wonderful resource, so there's some pretty smart people who have made some money, and they find a way to, they bought property here, and they're smart and they're generous and they want to be part of the community. So that's pretty cool. Two, we have a hospital here, and I'm on the hospital board, and so the hospital brings in medical professionals. So now we got doctors and nurses and business professionals who run it. And it's like, think about the people that are adding some intellectual horsepower to the community. And it's like these doctors and these medical professionals they're awesome, and then we're the county seat, so we got the courthouse. So now we got like judges and attorneys and professionals who work for the county. And think about those people who work there or who are involved in that area of our community. And it's like there's more intellectual horsepower there, and more people are involved in the community. And then throw on top of that the veterans home. Takes more smart people to run that place. So it's a weird mix that we're blessed with that brings these people together, and super diverse, very diverse group of people that, brings a lot of cool, they bring a lot of cool interests and a lot of cool things to our community. So that was kind of addressing your previous point. I mean, there have been changes, and it's all of the changes have been for the better, I think, in our community. I mean, I think one of the coolest things that's changed is our arts community. I know you guys are involved in that. I'm involved in that. And, there's a group of people driving it, and we're just kind of in there helping. I mean, Marcy Reynolds is a force in the community. I love her. And she's like, if it wasn't for the arts, we would be like, name a crappy little community,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I think
the ones with blinders on. So
yeah, I mean, we have culture, and the wonderful thing about our community is we have a lot of culture, and I give a lot of credit to the arts community for that. And it's really enhanced the community. And when we've done things like this Main Street project, I give the city a lot of credit because they pulled a lot of groups together to do this project, and it's become a really interesting. We've enhanced our downtown with a lot of different people's perspectives, and it's pretty cool.
yeah.
So I think the biggest change I've seen during the past, since I lived here, is culture becoming, pretty important. Everything from visual arts to music, theater. I mean, it's an unusual town, to have as much talent as we have.
Yeah. And to touch on that a little more, I mean, just my perspective is no one group seems to think they're, what I want to say, they're more important than another. These groups, as well as working with the Historical Society of the city,
Yep.
truly work really well together,
Mhm.
for improvement, or all the little programs they do. It's actually quite impressive. I've told this story before. When I first vacationed here, the first year Michelle and I were married, and it was 32 years ago, something like that. Picked up a paper in Waupaca. I'd never been to even Wisconsin. And on the front page, there was the high school theater play, like on the front page of the paper. Where I'm from, that doesn't happen.
No.
I was just telling Michelle at that point in time, we've got to move up here eventually, and it took something like, I don't know, 10 years, but we finally made it up here. And I'll tell you, man, it was a good move. Waupaca is definitely my home now.
Yep.
The other places I've lived or grew up, I don't even recognize them now. So, and I don't mean that derogatory, but it's just, you wouldn't recognize them if you went back to them. they're just gotten all big and grown up and yeah, roundabouts everywhere. Joe knows I love roundabouts. I'm an accident waiting to happen on those things. I mean. So,
But it's interesting because we talk about it all the time. If you travel, people, it's like you run into people and there's a Waupaca connection. It's like Waupaca is the center of the universe. I remember when I was with converting up in Clintonville, working at that position, every year I go to Hong Kong and China on a trip because we were doing business over there, and which in hindsight it's like we should have been making the stuff here, but we didn't have many options. Anyway, I'm on a treadmill in a hotel in Hong Kong, and I'm talking to the guy next to me, and he's like, we're talking. He's like, where are you from? He's like, Texas. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, where are you from? I'm like, well, Wisconsin. He's like, oh, really? He said, where in Wisconsin? I'm like, central Wisconsin, some little town. You wouldn't know. He's like, where? I'm like, Waupaca. He's like, no shit. He's like, my family has a place on the chain of lakes. It's like, it happens all the time. You meet people from, when you're traveling, and it's like, there's some weird connection. It's, my wife and I talk about all the time. We're the center of the universe.
That's that. I would agree with you. I mean, we're not just a tourist town.
No,
not at all. And I can tell you just from being in retail, we do okay during tourist season, but during the Christmas season, we have people come from all these big cities to come here and enjoy the charming little town, which has gotten much more charming, I think. I agree with you. I think they did an awesome job with the redo.
Yep.
I have no complaints about that at all. I think, between Justin, Aaron, and all the other people had their hands in that. It's wonderful. It truly is.
Yep. Speaking of those guys, I mean, I love what's going on with our city. I mean, these young people are coming into their own, and Justin and Aaron, and I know I'm forgetting about some people, but it's like, it's so cool that they are really doing well. And I know Laura Colbert just got the job at Park and Rec, and she's another outstanding young person in our community that's coming into leadership, and we're in good hands. They're doing some good stuff.
We just talked to her actually for the podcast. We have never met before, neither me or my dad, but it went really well, and she was awesome.
It was a great interview, Bill. She was fantastic and really interesting.
And that interview may have taken place before she accepted the position of director of Park and Rec. So
it did.
Now we got this great person involved.
I want to touch on something else with you, Bill. You seem to be well into cross-country skiing and fishing. Have you always been into those, or did you evolve into them over time?
Over time, I've gotten into it. When I met Mary and got married, I was really into golf, almost to the point where it was like unhealthy and like it was too much. It was obsessive.
Yeah, it becomes no fun anymore. I was there.
Yeah, I mean, I was having fun, but my kids were like between 1 and 6, and here I am playing like 27 holes a week, and it's Saturday, and my golfing buddies say, hey, you want to go down to Berlin to play Mascoutin? And you go down there with these guys, and then it takes 5 hours to play. It takes an hour to get down there. It takes 5 hours to play around a golf. And then on the way home, you stop at every bar between Berlin and Waupaca. And you come home, and it's like, it's not good. I mean, you're not the father you should be, or the husband. So it's like, I did that for, a number of years, and it's like, it's kind of part of my faith growth. I woke up and I'm like, this is not right. It's like golf is more important than what is important, like my family. So I kind of, I stepped back a little bit. I started getting more involved, like my kids were coming of age. So I got involved in leadership and youth programs at church. And, at this time, my faith was becoming more important. It was less about me. It was more about, him. And so I kind of stepped back from that obsession. And when I did that, two things happened. One of my first winters here, probably 3 or 4 winters in, we didn't have a snowblower, and we got about 18 or 20 inches of snow. So I'm out there shoveling, and at this point, I'm a golfer. So I'm walking and I'm swinging a golf club in the summer. In the winter, I'm not doing anything. So I'm out there shoveling. I totally wipe out my back. And have either of you guys had like back issues?
Not really. I've been very fortunate.
Yeah.
No.
Anyone who's listening, I mean, when you have a back issue, it is horrible. I mean, it probably comes close to giving birth, but it never will, because, for a man, nothing is worse than giving birth, just talk to any woman, right? So it was like, that was the worst pain that I've ever suffered, was when I wiped out my back shoveling snow. And so when that happened, I swore, you know what? I am going to do something about this. So I started cross-country skiing just to do something in the winter and strengthen my core and get into some better shape. And I think I skied recreationally for a year or two, and then we were at a Christmas party at a friend's house, and somebody brought up the idea, and it was Joe Udoni and Doug Pohl and Tim Navin and a bunch of guys, and somebody just brought up the idea, hey, we should do the Berkey. We should do the American Birkebeiner, because I hear that along the trail they serve like beer and soup, and it'd be a fun thing to do. So it's like totally misinformation. So it's like, okay, well, let's do that. That's how stupid we were. It's like, let's do that. So we started skiing together, and then we signed up to do the American Birkebeiner, which is, 34 miles. And it wasn't beer and soup. I mean, it was like, man, we gutted through it. And it was the most difficult thing I'd ever done. So just because I didn't wipe out my back, again, I got into skiing, and then a couple of us kept skiing, and every year we were doing the American Birkebeiner. And it's a great thing to do, to just do something in the winter. And for the first 10 years, I was super competitive and worked out 12 months a year to get good at it. And the past 10 years, I've done barely enough to finish. So this past February, I did my 20th Birkebeiner, and it's probably going to be my last, because I'll just get back to doing it for fun and stay in shape. So that's been good, and it's been an important part of my life to stay in shape. But again, trying to find balance in your life between, family and selfishness. It's a very difficult balance, and
I know.
so that was all part of the journey as well.
Do you have any tips for younger people listening? Maybe in the 20s, like myself, or in the 30s?
That's a good question. So, Joe, with being single, just freaking go for it. If you find something you're interested in, just go. You can be 100% in on whatever you want to do, and just be selfish about it. It's like, become the best you can be and just go for it. But the minute you bring other people into your life that are important, then it gets difficult. Then you have to start thinking about, well, how is my behavior impacting these people who I love? And you may have to pull back a little bit, So instead of going 110%, you may have to throttle back to like 70 and find that fine balance and make sure you're taking care of those people. So where you are, freaking go for it, you know? But there's a lot of young families out there, and it's like, you know, when my kids were young and I was skiing, it's like they were in bed at 7:30 and then I'd drive up to Iola. It was great. They've got lights on the ski trails, and I could go up there after dark after my kids went to bed and, you know, train for 2 hours and then come home. So it's really just a matter of finding balance and putting your family before yourself. But you know, we all go through seasons in life, and you're in a different season. You know, you're single, and you know, so freaking go for it.
You talked about the possibility about eventually, maybe sometime, having your own blog catering to fishing. And I was just curious because I know you do some fishing trips and you seem to be well into fly fishing. And yeah, I was just wondering, I mean, the folks out there listening, all four of them, if you have any tips for them. I mean, is there a particular place your go-to place to go fly fishing if you just have a couple hours?
You know, fishing is wonderful. So, you know, kind of going back to when I got out of golf, I started, I was very fortunate, kind of like you guys, where my parents had a place in the chain. So my dad had a fishing boat, and I would, I'd go out there again, maybe after work, or, you know, take a kid with me, and I'd go fishing. And I was using a spinning rod fishing. I was a big bass fisherman for probably about 5 years. And then I thought, you know what? I want to try fly fishing. So I screwed around with it for a year and really sucked at it. And then I got involved with Central Wisconsin Trout Unlimited, and they have a trout fishing school. And in 3 days, it shortened my learning curve to the point where I caught one fish in the first season. I tried to do it myself. And then after I took the class, I was catching fish almost every time I went out, just with the knowledge that these guys had. So if you're going to consider fly fishing, I'd suggest, one, like, take the course with Central Wisconsin Fly Fishing School. It's outstanding. Or get involved with somebody who can, you know, be your mentor. I become obsessed with trying to, again, balance. It's like I'm trying to balance my business and my family and my personal interests, but I fly fish as much as I can. And my wife is, you know, very understanding, and she enjoys fishing, so we go together. The one thing about fishing, fly fishing especially, is everybody thinks that fly fishing is about trout fishing. Like, you're out on a stream and you're fishing for trout, but trout fishing, like, you're in an environment where there's like all kinds of trees, and you're casting this fly line that's going back and forth 30 feet, and you're getting your fly hung up in a tree, and it's very frustrating. So consider fly fishing on a lake. I love fly fishing on the chain for bluegills or bass. It's really fun, and it's not frustrating. Fly fishing the Waupaca River is really fun, especially downstream near Waupaca. There's smallmouth bass. If you talk about a place where I like to go down to Waupaca, because it's big. You're not going to get hung up in trees, and the fish are pretty cooperative. I mean, for anyone who's considering getting into it, that's what I'd do, is think about fishing outside of a tiny little stream. Once you get decent at it, there's a lot of great creeks, you know, within a half hour here. I'm not going to give my spots away, but I live on the Pine River. I got a cabin on the Pine River. It's a wonderful place. It's not a secret. There's a lot of trout in there. And we have a cabin across from the Ding Tavern. It's good right there. And, you know, the Pine River is good. The Willow Creek is good. So there's a lot of good good place to fish within a half hour of Waupaca. And that's another great reason to live in Waupaca, is because these poor sons of bitches in Chicago, I mean, they got to drive like 3 or 4 hours to go do anything fun. And we're like, it's like a half hour outside of our door. It's
Yeah.
it's incredible.
What's your favorite fish? What's your most prized fish to eat?
So it's interesting. So my daughter just got married this past Thursday, and
Yeah, I saw that. And you had some weirdo marry her, didn't you?
yeah,
Officiate the ceremony.
yeah.
Some
Well, you know, barbers,
strange
they can
little
do
dude.
barbers can do anything. They're
Yeah.
like barbers are dentists, barbers, you know, they can do anything. So we had a barber marry my daughter.
Yeah, we're just screwing with you, Don. Sorry.
Yeah, Donnie is like my best friend, and he and Perry are really close. So she asked Donnie to marry her. So he got ordained on the interweb, and so it was awesome. But where was I going? We get off on these tangents. It's like,
We do. I'm bad about that. I go flying.
I know. Well, it's
Talk
good.
about- like my favorite fish when I
Oh yeah, eating fish.
was trout. I used to love to catch trout, and it's just my go-to meal. I just love
Yeah.
them. But
So okay, so this past 2 weeks, my daughter's been here from Dallas with her now husband, and we had a wonderful week. They left on Sunday, and then on Saturday night, Mary and I went out in our fishing boat on the chain, and I caught just a pile of bluegills, and then it's honestly, I mean, I love walleye. You know, they're the best. But right behind it, I love bluegills, and we caught a pile of bluegills and cleaned them up, and had my daughter and her husband over Sunday morning, and we had eggs and bluegills, and
nice.
absolutely delicious. And I don't kill many fish, but I will kill big bluegills anytime. And I do harvest some trout, you know, brook trout. If I get into a bunch where it's like, you know what, I can get a meal. But typically I'm kind of a catch and release guy. But I will take my share.
Okay. You ever muskie hunt?
My brother Jack is like, he's really into it. He's really good at it. I haven't gotten into it. I would like to do it with a fly rod, and it's very, you know, you can do it. You can be successful fishing muskies with a fly rod. I just haven't, you know, it's like, okay, what am I going to do today? I have a muskie fly rod. I got muskie flies. But am I going to just go have fun? I got like 3 hours. Am I going to go have fun catching smallmouth? Or am I going to like get frustrated trying to fish for muskie? So it's like,
Yeah. They're hard to catch. I can't even comprehend trying to use a fly on those things. I've been in, I think it was Lake Mercer up in Minocqua, and,
oh yeah,
and these things come out of the water like torpedoes, man. I mean, you have to be ready. I can't even comprehend a fly rod just because the stuff I was using was like basically surf rods,
yeah,
and they were still bending those things over.
yep,
Not
yeah.
to mention, what do they call them? The fish of 10,000 casts. So they can get a little monotonous.
Yeah, you know, and you know, for somebody like my brother, it might be the fish of 200 casts, you know, because you know, when you do it that long, you kind of figure out where not to go and where to go. And so for us, you know, it's a fish of 10,000 casts, but you know, he's put his time in. So, you know, these guys have it kind of dialed in where, you know, they're at least going to get some fish's attention, and they're going to get some fish to follow their lures. And sometimes seeing a fish is almost as good as catching it. You know, when it comes to like a 50-inch fish, it's pretty darn cool.
Kind of impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
When my dad first moved up here, I took him out. It's a little lake over in Risqué County. He lived over very, very close to Watoma. And he was always used to catching bass, and he was just kind of getting back into fishing. And we were just running topwater lures over the lake and out of this little boat. And we were just, one northern after the other. And none of them had no spectacular sizes or anything. They were all, released them all. But Bill, every time he would catch one and bring it in, he kept trying to lip it. And it got to the point where I'm thinking, well, I don't want to teach him a lesson by not telling him, because that's a bad lesson. And secondly, it got to the point I was slapping his hand. I'm like, no, keep your hand away from its mouth.
Yeah.
But he just kept trying to oh man. But yeah,
Funny.
well, he must have learned his lesson, because he went out by himself after that and he didn't have any stitches. So
Yeah, I think I've done that the first few times I caught a northern. Doesn't take too long.
yeah, you learn real quick, but so.
Yep, for sure.
Have you ever been much of a hunter?
My dad, he's a great dad. He taught us, my brother and I, fishing. He took us duck hunting, and that was the first really hunting experience I had. We lived in some prairie, and we were probably, maybe an hour drive from the Wisconsin River, and it was reasonable duck hunting. So I remember a couple seasons we would go take a drive up to the Wisconsin River, and we'd take a couple pallets and some 2x4s and chicken wire, and we'd build this duck blind on the Wisconsin River. And it might have been September. And then he had about a 10 or 12 foot john boat, and we'd throw that on the top of the car. And so it was a project. My brother, my dad, and I, we'd go build the blind, and then a few weeks later we'd go duck hunting and put decoys out. And it was really all about drinking hot chocolate, going out there at 4 a.m. and hanging out. And sometimes we'd see ducks and sometimes we wouldn't, and we'd shoot. Sometimes we'd get them. But my brother just totally gravitated towards it. And at the time I was really into tennis. And so I kind of, after a couple of years of that, I got into tennis, and there was like an indoor facility in Madison called Cherokee Country Club. So at that point, I kind of moved away from hunting and got really into tennis. I was on the tennis team in high school. So moved away from hunting. I kind of came back to it a little bit, but I'm a horrible shot, just terrible. I went on a hunting trip maybe about 7 or 8 years ago to South Dakota, pheasant hunting. I couldn't hit anything. So it's like, am I going to invest time in learning how to shoot, or am I going to enjoy fly fishing? And it's interesting, because if you're into fishing, fly fishing, I can fish from March through December, and then I ski between December and March.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
This episode is presented by Northern Kitchen. Northern Kitchen is a brand new store that is in Lucky Tree's family of stores on Main Street in downtown Waupaca. This new kitchen store is on the corner in the last block on North Main Street. It looks fantastic in there. You have to see it to believe it. My mom, Michelle Drake, has been working really hard on this store. It looks great in there. There are lots of great kitchen gadgets that you cannot find anywhere else in the area. Make sure to shop at Northern Kitchen on Main Street in Waupaca. Bill, I wanted to ask you about a game show that you started during the pandemic. I want to know how you thought of it and why you're doing it, and It's just so unique and interesting, something that no one's done in the community.
We have regular staff meetings at Office Outfitters every Monday morning. And, again, Mary and I, it's like our faith is part of our business. So we start the meeting with prayer, and then we get into business. And, for probably, I don't know, 2017, 2018, 2019, we were always talking about, well, what can we do on social media? What can we do to, be funny and interesting? And, we just come up with some stuff kind of ad hoc that was, fun. And I give a lot of credit to Lori Sauce. She's our print department manager. She's kind of our creative thought leader in the business. And we constantly challenging ourselves to, like, what can we do to become more interesting and more funny and more relevant to our customers on social media. And it's never been about selling. It's all about relationships, because we have found that our best customers are the people we have relationships with. So that's always been the focus, is, developing new relationships, making our relationships deeper, and just having fun with the people we're close to. So I'm thinking it was probably in 2019. Again, we were challenging ourselves, like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we had just hired this really bright young woman, Becca Jagla, to join us. And she leads our effort in promotional products. So anything you want a logo on, she can help you, like whether it's a mug or a koozie or calendar, she can source that for you. So we hired her to help us with that business. So Lori and Becca are kind of our creative force in our company. And in late 2019, they had the idea that we should do a game show. We should do a game show on Facebook Live. So we talked about it, it evolved, and I don't know when. I'd have to go back to see when it started, but I'm kind of thinking it's January of 2020 when we started doing this. So it was really kind of pre-pandemic. Like, we had just started maybe hearing about, COVID in China, when this thing started. So I think the first couple episodes might have been, pre-pandemic. And the idea was, we need to do something fun. We need to involve other businesses and organizations in the community. And it can't be about selling stuff. I mean, maybe once or twice a year, we actually promote something we do at Office Outfitters. It's the focus has always been on, another business in Waupaca or a nonprofit that we feature as a sponsor. And the other thing that we wanted to do was, again, this is 10 o'clock on Wednesday mornings. So it's, we are very loyal patrons of Simpson's restaurant. And we approached Simpson's about having John Krieger, who is the best bartender in the county, if not Wisconsin, like having him on the show to mix a cocktail. So that was something that would be fun. And they embraced it. Simpson's Danny has been supportive, and John, I can't believe, he has been so great. I can't believe it. And it's like, he is into it. And so it's been really a blast. So we wanted to do something to involve businesses. And then we thought, well, let's do a trivia thing. And so we thought about, well, how can we get people to interact with us on social media? So we ask a question about a business, like on a Monday or Tuesday. It's like, okay, if we're going to do something about the Agape Center on Main Street, that's, they help people in crisis. So it's like, So we're going to have them on the show. It's like, well, what street is Agape on? And we post a question on Facebook and people answer it. And then if they answer it correctly, they're eligible for a prize when we like spin a Wheel of Fortune type thing during the game show. And people responded. I mean, we put the question out there. It's like we're getting, 100 people responding to the question. So we have this, people are eligible for the prize, and then we say like tune in on Wednesday to watch the show on Facebook Live. And in the middle of the workday on a Wednesday morning, I mean, who has time for that? Not me, but we might get anywhere between 10 and 50 people watching live. And we do goofy like call-in prizes. We interview, these people who are sponsoring the show, like let's say it's Agape. They're sponsoring the show. They're going to donate a $20 chamber gift certificate for the winner of what we do. And then what's really cool is it's live. So it's in our store. So somebody may walk in the store. Like there's people we're doing business while the show's going on. So somebody may walk in the store, and my favorite is like, we got this dude who does business with us. He brings packages to ship every day. His name is Jason. And he brings packages in every day, and he is nuts. This guy is crazy. Like Jonathan, our awesome retail manager, will talk to him, and it's like, hey, Jason, how you doing? He's like, well, I'm shipping kittens today. He brings these boxes, and he's like, and these people are standing in our store, and they're like, I'm shipping kittens, and he's believable. So people are like, what the hell is this guy talking about? So he's insane. So during the show, like in the past 6 months, we're doing the show, and in walks this crazy guy, Jason, and it's like I'm the host on the show. So it's like, oh, well, we have somebody coming in the store, and hello, can you introduce yourself to our audience? And he's like, yeah, my name is, he makes up some kind of fake name, like I'm Leroy, and I'm an exotic dancer. And it's like, what the hell? It's like, well, where do you perform? And he's like, well, I perform exotic dancing at Bethany and the Veterans Home. And it's like, I mean, it's like, you just never know what's going to happen on this show because it's live, and who knows who's going to show up and what's going to happen. So we have fun with that part. We have fun with our guests who sponsor the show. We learn about their business. We promote their nonprofit or their business. And then, all these people who answer the question correctly the day before, they're on a big Wheel of Fortune. We spin it digitally, and they win a gift certificate. And then John, from the bartender from Simpsons, educates us on mixing a craft cocktail. So it's just fun, and people watch it, maybe not live, but they might watch it later when it's on their news feed, and it's just goofy, and it's a way to engage a community.
Well, in each show, don't you wear a gold suit or tuxedo, right?
Yeah. So how that happened was, like, when we started doing the show, Lori found this gold sequin jacket on Amazon, so we ordered it. It's like, okay, I wore that, and I kind of had a white shirt, just kind of open collar or whatever. It's like, so I did that for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then Carol Hart, who is this awesome woman who is lives in Waupaca. She's been super active in the community, served on some boards of, Waupaca Community Foundation, and she's a really cool lady. So she comes in the store, and she's got like this sequin bow tie. She's like, you need to wear this on your show. So I started wearing a sequin bow tie to go on my sequin jacket. And so now I'm fully like decked out, and it's It's just hilarious. And I got this, it's really weird, like the microphone that I use. It's like, do you ever, Tim, you might remember Match Game in the 70s.
Yeah.
Remember? Yeah. So Gene Rayburn, he had this like microphone that was this long and then a tiny little like round thing on the end of it, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like Charles Nelson Riley and Richard Dawson and all these weird people. It was hilarious. And it's like, well, we got to have a microphone. So we move a lot of office furniture. So we have these like, you know, these slide things that you can move furniture on a floor easily. You put them underneath furniture and you can push them. So we have these like huge, like 6-foot sliders. And then they got these metal hooks that you can put through those to pull them. So we took one of these big hooks and I just put tinfoil on the end of it to make a phony microphone. And so that's been the microphone. And one of the funnier episodes, which is kind of a little kind of risque, was during the beginning of the pandemic, everybody's sanitizing, you know, everybody's sanitizing everything. So Lori starts the camera and I got this microphone and I've got my sanitizing wipe and I'm kind of like wiping this long microphone, and it was a little bit, you know, a little bit kind of weird, you know, but I mean, and not a lot of people got it, but a lot of people did. And it was just like, it's
You weren't
just
doing it really
funny.
slow. You weren't doing it really slow with a creepy grin on your face.
Exactly. So we have our risque moments and we take some chances, and, you know, I get a lot of during the show, you know, whether it's Lori or Mary or Becca, they're like, you can't say that. It's like, well, I just did. And it's live and it's fun. So it's all good.
It's
Yeah,
cool how much of a team effort the whole thing is.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it. You have the credits at the end to giving everyone their fair share, which I think is so cool. Seeing everyone work together to do something so cool for the community like that,
You know, it's
especially during the
interesting.
pandemic.
Yeah, it really was cool because, you know, people started doing stuff online because it's the only way you could connect, right? So we didn't really understand. I mean, we kind of did. It's like, okay, it's like we were doing it before the pandemic and for a month or two, and then the pandemic started. It's like, wow, this is a really cool opportunity because, you know, we're closed. Our business was closed, but we're still doing the show. And so that was really fun. And people responded to that. On Facebook, they're like, oh, this is great. You know, we need this. And then, you know, everybody was doing stuff. I mean, like our friend Debbie Fisher did these wonderful fashion shows online. And, you know, Eric Hendrickson is this attorney in town, and he was doing this weird jump around thing. Like every week, he and his wife would dress in these bizarre costumes and they'd do this jump around thing every week. And people were doing all kinds of crazy stuff to just, you know, build community. And it was kind of interesting and fun. So we were happy to be doing that kind of thing. But to your point about the teamwork, at first, like the first like 2 or 3 months, it was like it took so much effort. Like I had cue cards and I had, you know, we had planned everything out to the last detail. And now it's like, you know, it's like everyone knows what to do. And it's kind of like 9:55 rolls around and our guest is there. We explain what's going to happen, and, you know, and we just kind of roll with it. And it's just easy and fun. You know, it's interesting how things evolve. And I think your podcast is probably, I mean, this is pretty darn easy, but I'm sure as you grow, it's just going to get easier and more fun. and it's pretty darn cool.
Yeah, this part's pretty easy. I think Joe's finding the editing to be,
Yeah,
well, the one that one was really long, and
pretty much the hardest part has been the editing. One, because you're looking at the computer so much.
Yeah.
That's one part. And also just with getting familiar with doing it, it takes longer compared to doing a whole lot. Like, I haven't edited a ton before this, but I've definitely learned a lot just preparing all of this. I feel like I've learned so much about how to, well, be in charge of this kind of thing, this kind of project, because it's really different than anything I did in Boy Scouts, and way different than the Eagle Scout project, even though there was some social media aspect to what I did there. But it's been I've learned a lot of different and new skills I didn't think I would learn already.
You're gonna get so good at this. It's gonna be cool.
we already has. We first started. He didn't know when to intercede. He was struggling with that a little bit. When to ask questions,
Yeah.
and now, I mean, this one, including the last two, I think he's done spectacular. So,
Well, you've gotten a lot better too.
well, I'm good at everything I do. You know that.
So now I'm moving on to my favorite. This is Papa's Pilar rum.
Well, there you go.
Oh.
So this is the kind of the nightcap, because I think we're down to the home stretch.
Yeah. Do you like tequila, Bill?
My wife does.
Michelle?
And I'm kind of a Irish whiskey guy. If I'm gonna drink something, just kind of like this is stuff. This is really good. So I just like to have a really nice whiskey, or this is a rum actually on the rocks, and just a sipper.
Where's that out of?
That's out of the Keys.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been really getting into saltwater fly fishing, and I've been listening to some podcasts, and this company advertises, and it's like I tried it, it's like, holy crap, it's really good.
Cool.
So you mentioned that you listen to a lot of other podcasts. I think that for most people in the area, I would say this is a safe guess that podcasts are a little bit getting popular more, especially during COVID a little bit when everyone was at home. But it wasn't really all the rage and stuff, maybe like it was in the West and East Coast. So how did you get into podcasts, and do you have any that you like to listen to?
I love this. It's a great question, Joe. So I talked about my selfishness and being a golfer, and it's like my awakening. It's like, you know what? I got to be a better dad and husband. I think it was about maybe 10 years ago, I decided that I needed to be a better dad to my son. And we started to do like vacations, just him and I. Like, just, it could be 4 days, it could be whatever, but we're going to do something together. So we did a few trips together. And then 2 years ago, he called me, and he said he was going through some stuff, I'm not going to get into it here. He was going through some stuff, and he said, "Hey, Dad, I think I'm going to take a road trip from Seattle." He lives in Seattle. Seth, my son, he's awesome. He worked for the Seattle Sounders, and then he went to Zillow. At the time, he was with Zillow, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna do a road trip from Seattle to San Diego." And I'm like, "That's incredible." I said, "That is so cool. You should do that." I said, "Hey, would you mind if I tag along for part of that trip?" He said, "That would be incredible." So he and I went from Seattle to San Francisco together for I think it was 4 or 5 days. And he introduced me to some podcasts. And I had heard of podcasts, but I had never ever listened to them. And there were two podcasts that he introduced me to that I still listen to today. One of them is called The Dollop, and it's two stand-up comedians. One of them is from Wisconsin, I think maybe Milwaukee. And the premise is that not the Milwaukee guy, but the other guy, I think he might be West Coast, does like he does full-blown research on a situation in history or a historical figure. I mean, it could be anything from Donald Trump. It could be Andrew Jackson. It could be, obscure historical things. Like they did a show on the war on squirrels, when at one point in history, some people thought it'd be a good idea to kill all the squirrels in the whole country. It's just bizarre. And so it was weird, but he played 2 episodes for me that I still share with all my friends. One of them is called 10-Cent Beer Night. And it's about this baseball game that occurred in like 1974 between the Cleveland Indians and the Texas Rangers. And they had played each other a week before and gotten in a huge brawl in Texas. And Billy Martin was the manager of the Rangers. And Tim, you probably know Billy Martin.
Oh, yeah.
He was a volatile figure in baseball. So they get in this huge fight in Texas. And then the next week, the way baseball works is a lot of times teams play each other. It's like they play in one place and then a week later they might move to the other team's place. So a week later, they got a huge fight in Texas, then they come to Cleveland. And the night that the game was going to be in Cleveland, the people in Cleveland decided they were going to sell beers for 10 cents each. And they promoted it, and it was like all the people in Cleveland were pissed off because there's this huge fight in Texas, and now they're fired up. They're going to get even, and then you throw 10-cent beers in it, and it explodes into this horrible situation where they didn't even finish the game. It just, you have to listen to this thing. There's a couple other episodes of The Dollop, so listen to The Dollop. It's hysterical. It's funny. It's thought-provoking. It's good stuff. And the other one is a podcast called the Rewatchables. And it's this group of millennials that sit around and they'll talk about movies. It's like they'll sit there and talk for 2 hours about a movie, and it's everything from what was your, who should have been in the movie that wasn't, or what was the most memorable part of the movie, or they just have all these interesting things they talk about movies. And it's interesting to me is that, like, if a movie lasts 2 hours, they talk about a movie for 2 hours. But I'm totally glued to this. Like, one of my favorite episodes, it's like, I highly suggest, first of all, watch Top Gun. Okay, so watch the movie Top Gun, then listen to the podcast, The Rewatchables, when they talk about Top Gun. It's hilarious. I mean, they talk about everything from the beach volleyball scene to the horrible scene where Tom Cruise is like supposedly making love to this Kelly McGinnis, and it's a horrible situation. And it's like, but it's an awesome podcast. Then go see the new Top Gun. And then you've had a great experience, like everything. So those are 2 good podcasts. Now, so my son turned me on to those 2. Now I am totally hooked on fishing podcasts. I listen to, my parents have a place in Destin, Florida. So there's a podcast called The Ripple that has, every week they talk to 4 fishing guides on the panhandle of Florida about what's going on. And it's weird. I'm totally I got bromances with these guides, and I totally listen to them. And then when I go down there like 4 or 5 times a year, and I'm totally tuned into what's going on. And then I listen to this podcast from Andy Mill. He's probably the best saltwater fly fisherman on the planet, and he drinks this stuff. It's delicious, and he's interviews legendary guides in the Keys. And then I listened to another one from April Volke, who is the best woman fly fisherman on the planet, who, she's really interesting too. So that's my podcast thing.
You mentioned Top Gun Maverick. I'm guessing you watched Top Gun Maverick. Did you like it?
Loved it. It was really cool because my son, have you seen it, Joe?
Yeah, we've both seen it.
Yeah. So my son came home for about a week in June, and we went to see it opening night in Appleton. And do you find any similarities between Top Gun and Star Wars in that battle scene, the final battle scene?
I haven't thought about it, but I guess now that you mention it, it's somewhat similar. They do crash though in Top Gun Maverick.
But if you think about the whole Death Star thing with where they're, the precision flying, and then they had to hit this tiny little spot with a missile, just kind of like, Luke trusting the Force, and that whole, it's like, I don't want to be a spoiler, and I might have already spoiled, but my son and I looked at each other like, holy crap, this is like combination of like Top Gun and Star Wars. Holy crap.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But the flying scenes were just incredible though.
Yep.
Those made up for. I'm very critical about movies, especially storyline and that sort of thing. Speaking of that, I watched a little bit of, do you remember Commando, the old Arnold Schwarzenegger movie?
I never saw that.
It's hard to watch, but at the same time, you can't stop watching it. It's really, quite frankly, it's probably one of the worst movies ever, in my opinion. But like I said, it's so bad, you just can't stop watching it. But I don't know where I was really going with that. But yeah, as far as Top Gun Maverick, the storyline was decent, I thought. And I will say this is the best movie I've seen at a theater in a long time.
Well, we haven't been in theaters in a long time.
Well, we went and saw, me and Greg Mosquitis and Joe went to see the last Fast and Furious. And Joe had to wake me up twice. And I had to wake Greg up once because he was over there. We're just snoring. It's supposed to be this action-packed movie, and I'm over here just passing out. If Joe hadn't have been there with us, I'm not so sure I wouldn't have walked out, and that's what I mean. That's been what's been at the theaters in my mind anyway.
Top Gun was kind of interesting because the storyline was okay, but it kind of relied on the first movie, and it was kind of hokey in some areas and a little bit predictable, but it's like, I loved it. It was just, I just loved it so much, even though it was like, I don't know, it wasn't totally original, or
Yeah.
it was just so good given the history of the original Top Gun.
Yeah, it's nostalgic. It really is. Speaking of Tom Cruise, I actually am a big Tom Cruise fan. I'm actually looking forward to the next Mission Impossible movie. So
that's interesting because like I have not watched any, and my son is like, oh my God, he's like, it's the only like franchise where every movie gets better.
yeah,
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
absolutely. Well, the only two, a little trivia, the only two people that have been in every movie was, of course, is Tom Cruise, but Ving Rhames. That's the only two that's been in every movie, which I found fascinating. But I've always been a big Ving Rhames fan. Liked him a lot. You know,
I
even
gotta
when,
watch it.
yeah, even when he was playing, what was that dude's name? Telly Savalas played him. The cop with the sucker, uh, Kojak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Ving Rhames did a Kojak thing for a couple of years. Even that I liked, but no, yeah, you should give it a go. They're interesting.
We're gonna watch Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Speaking of movies, I gotta share something that we do
Okay.
that I think y'all need to do out there in podcast land. So about 3 or 4 years ago, we've got I don't know, 3 or 4 couple friends that, we're pretty tight with. And we decided, winter kind of sucks. So we're going to do something kind of fun. So let's say it's 4 couples. So you got like 8 people. Every person once a month. So we're going through like October through May. Like, okay, we're going to draw a month out of a hat. It's like, okay, I got September. It's dinner and a movie. So I am going to show a movie and I'm going to cook dinner for my friends. And y'all got to do that. It's hilarious. So you pick a movie, and when with your friends, it's like, I'll guarantee you have a diverse range of tastes. Like, you're going to like action movies. Maybe you like Marvel heroes, or maybe you like, kind of Sylvester Stallone or Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. And like Mary and I, we like Turner Classic Movies. So we show like black and white movies, and you just have a blast with it. Like our friend Kevin Murphy, he did the best job ever. He showed Goldfinger, Bond, and they cooked a nice meal, and then he had Bond trivia, played Bond music all night, and then we watched the movie. So, just if you're talking about movies, just take it to the next level,
It's
share
actually a
with
really
your
good
friends.
idea.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like growing up, I really like the old movies, the Road to movies with Bob Hope and Bing
Oh
Crosby,
yeah.
and all the old horror movies with, the Swamp Thing or whatever. That might not be it. No, the Loch Ness. No, I can't think of what I'm trying to say. Anyway,
Godzilla and
yeah, Werewolf, Frankenstein,
oh yeah.
Boris
Invisible.
Karloff. But yeah, I like all those. I used to love Westerns too. So,
For sure.
you know,
Yeah,
all,
Turner Classic they do such a good job. And what's weird is like now, it's like movies that were made in the 80s are now classics. It's like, holy crap, I guess we're old, Tim.
yeah. Silence of the Lambs is a classic. So I was telling Joe, he should read some of the books these movies were based on. Because Silence of the Lambs is a spectacular movie, but the book was quite good. It's like I was fascinated with the Outlaw Josie Wales. I don't know if you've seen that.
Oh yeah.
But the book was identical, actually very identical to the movie, which was fascinating to me because you rarely saw that. Like Last of the Mohicans, it was 2 totally different stories, both really good though. So
Yeah.
I always kind of thought that was interesting. Yeah. Well, that's what got me reading again, because I didn't read for years. Was we were sitting at the dinner table one night with one of my wife's aunts talking about all these books that needed to be banned, and there was this list, and for different reasons, and the Harry Potter's because it was promoting witchcraft or whatever. And so I got my hands on that list and read every book on it. So just to see what just to see what was all the Kadu was about. But
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
For sure.
Thank you again.
I got to go to bed, man.
Yeah, it's getting to be that time.
Thank you again, Bill, for stopping by on our podcast today.
Yep.
It was awesome being able to talk to you, and so many interesting stories you have. We'll have to have you on again.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. And
Enjoyed it.
say one more thing about Bill's store, Office Outfitters. You need any office supplies. Seriously, he has it. If he doesn't have it, he can get it within a day normally. And I know this from experience. He's helped me out for years. So
Thank you.
just a little plug there, and it's true. And you can't find better customer service. So, even with Bill there, it's good.
Yeah, we got good people.
Yes, you do. Very good people. All of them are quite wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh,
No,
hey,
thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm excited that you're doing this, and can't wait to see the great things that are in store for us and the people you'll talk to. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Well, we appreciate you, Bill. You have a great night, man. Enjoy
All
the
right.
rest of your birthday.
Good night.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you again, everyone, for listening to this episode of PodPaca. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more PodPaca updates. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Every subscription helps. It's free. You can always decide to unsubscribe later. Also, if you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, make sure to follow us, maybe rate us 5 stars, give us a nice review. That would mean the world to us. The more watches and listens we get, the more beneficial we can be for the local community. So any support you give just by watching or listening means the world. So thank you for listening and have a good day, everybody.